Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Matias Avila, and on behalf of Doctors Bañales and Gracia, I have the pleasure of hosting this month's liver seminar. In these occasions, we are very proud and happy to count on a very talented speaker, who is Chantal Dedouet. Chantal Dedouet works in Paris. She works at the Cordelier Research Center and at INSERM. And Chantal, she graduated in biochemistry from the Sorbonne University, and she did her PhD studies under the supervision of Professor Christian Brechot at the Institut Necker in Paris. And there she already started working on cell proliferation and the regulation of cell cycle. Chantal then moved to London to carry out postdoctoral studies and under supervision of Professor Dively, where she specialized further in the study of cell cycle regulation. Then she moved back to Paris, where she's running her own laboratory now for a number of years, and she's become a widely recognized expert in the study of liver ploidy. And today, she will share with us her knowledge and research on this topic related to liver disease and different aspects of liver pathology. So Chantal, we want to thank you very much for being with us today, and apologize for not being able to host you in Madrid this time. But anyway, we really appreciate your effort of coming through the internet with us and sharing this. So hand it over to you.
Thank you. So first of all, thank you for your invitation. I'm really pleased to be here today and to have some scientific discussions that miss me a lot. So thank you for people that I'm discussing this morning about different projects. It was great. And I'm very happy to present you some data from my laboratory. So first of all, I will give you some introduction about polyploidization. So polyploidization refers to an organism or a tissue that contains more than 2 sets of chromosomes, and you can have 2 sets, 4 sets, or 8 sets. That's called polyploid cells. And what is important to know is you have a different type of ploidy. So either you have a nuclear ploidy where you increase the number of chromosome sets in the nuclei. Here you have a tetraploid mononucleated cells, or you can have 8 sets of chromosomes and octoploid mononucleated cells. So this is called nuclear ploidy. But you can also increase your ploidy if you multiply the number of nuclei that we call cellular ploidy. So you can have a cell with 2 nuclei, with 2 sets, that is called tetraploid binucleated cells, or 3 nuclei with 2n, 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 and exoploid trinucleated cells. So that you will see that this both setting appears in the liver in the rest of my talk. So you can find a polyploid cell. So all organisms in mammalian can be completely, totally polyploid. But in a human, in mammalian, you have different tissue that contain polyploid cells. So these cells can appear normally during the development or the differentiation of certain type of cells. And this is true during normal development, for example, in the heart, where the cardiomyocyte can be tetraploid, in the bone marrow with megakaryocytes that are highly polyploid, and also in the placenta. And these cells appear during normal development. And by contrast, in other tissue, if these cells appears, the tissue being always diploid, but in certain conditions, during pathologies of tumorigenesis, you can have the generation of polyploid cells, and in this case, this is often linked to carcinogenesis, and I will come back to this during my talk. So for normal polyploidy in a controlled way, what has been discovered is the genesis of polyploid cells can be a gain of function for the tissue. And this has been demonstrated in megakaryocytes and in cardiomocytes. For example, in megakaryocytes, more polyploid you are, more you will have high production of platelets. And in cardiomocytes, so in your heart, you have cardiomocytes that are diploid and tetraploid. And it has been demonstrated that tetraploid cardiomocytes have a higher function of contractions. So this is really, in this case, a gain of function for the tissue. In a thymoregenesis process, this is completely different. And what has been demonstrated during the transformation process is polyploid contingent, tetraploid contingent cells always appear before the genesis of aneuploid contingent. So really the tetraploid contingent is related to the association of chromosomal instability. And what has been demonstrated in certain tissue, in certain transformed tumor tissue, if you see the apparition of tetraploid contingent, if these cells re-enter the cell cycle, they are blocked under a p53 checkpoint and then enter senescence or apoptosis, just to be sure that they will not proliferate, because if they proliferate during mitosis, there is a high level of chromosome missegregation and genesis of aneuploid cells. So you really need to control the proliferation of these cells. And this has been demonstrated, for example, in intestine tumoral process, cervical tumorigenesis, different type of tumorigenesis in different tissue. And in the colon tissue, there is also genesis of this polyploid contingent during the tumorigenesis process. And it has been demonstrated that there is a kind of immunosurveillance of these cells that can be killed by specific macrophages populations. So there is different way to become polyploid, different mechanism. I will not enter in detail because I will more detail the different mechanism in the liver. But basically, either you have some mechanisms that are not linked to cell division, that is fusion, that can lead to polyploidization, or a specific alteration of cell cycle during G2 phase, during also metaphase, and during cytokinesis. In these three steps of the cell cycle lead to the generation of polyploid cells, and I will come back to this during the rest of my talk. So in the lab, this is now many years that we are working on polyploidization, and the liver is quite an interesting organ because this is the only organ when we can have modification of ploidization during physiological steps, during liver development, but also during pathological setting, during NAFL disease, but also during HCC development. And this is really the main focus of our team. So what we discovered a few years ago is during normal development, we have a modification of ploidy that is linked to the genesis of cellular ploidy with the genesis in your liver of binucleated hepatocytes that are mainly tetraploid. So how it works, this I will go very quickly to this part of the work. It had been published a long time ago, but your liver at birth is only constituted of diploid hepatocytes, and during suckling weaning transition, there is a genesis of this binucleated contingent that is very easy to visualize on tissue liver section of human or mice or rat by simply label your nuclei with Hux, and with the beta-catenin labeling, you can label membrane and differentiate binucleated cells from mononucleated cells. And what we discovered a few years ago is really under an insulin signaling that you generate these cells. The insulin signaling activates mTOR pathway and in fact interact with ROA signaling that is essential for cytokinesis. And what we observe during suckling weaning transition, the diploid cells normally divide normally with a complete cytokinesis, leading to the genesis of two diploid contingent. But after suckling weaning transition, we observe that the hepatocytes engage into a cell cycle with incomplete cytokinesis process. Basically, there is no cytokinesis, and you generate this binucleated contingent in the liver. And the suckling weaning transition really corresponds to less proliferation in your liver. So let's say that you have what we observe is the level of fluid is higher in murine than in human, but in human we have analyzed in different normal tissue liver section, and you have around 30% of your hepatocytes that are binucleated and tetraploid. A few years ago, because of this crosstalk between normal physiological polyploidy and insulin signaling, we have been interested to analyze if there's some alteration, if ploidy content in the liver in some pathological setting related to insulinoresistance. So we have been concentrate on non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, as you may know, has become the most common cause of chronic liver disease worldwide. And while steatosis is associated with a low risk of adverse outcome, clearly steatohepatitis has the potential to progress to more severe stage as cirrhosis, but also to hepatocellular carcinoma. And since now a few years, it is clearly demonstrated that pre-cirrhotic NASH, like without cirrhosis, patients with only NASH have a higher risk to develop HCC. So here is just the histology feature of NASH that when we observe macrovesicular steatosis here, related to level of lobular inflammation and also to ballooning degeneration of hepatocytes that you can observe here. So the NAFLD is a quite complex disease with multi-parallel hits, and in the lab we are quite interested to understand how lipotoxicity and insulinoresistant impacts on the alteration of the division of the hepatocytes. So lipotoxicity is caused by free acid and their metabolites, and this change place extrametabolic stress on distal organelles as mitochondria and endoreticulum stress, and this leads to further injury, as you may know, as inflammation, death, fibrosis, that are really important in NASH disease. So we are trying to understand how all these hits can impact on hepatocyte division and on polyploidization process. So we are working on different animal models that I will present you. So high-fat, high-sucrose diet model, that is more a model of steatosis, and choline-deficient high-fat diet, that is more a model of NASH. And we are also collaborate with different clinicians, with the Professor Valérie Pareldi at the Beaujon Hospital, also with Professor Julien Calderaro, that is working all around Paris at Henri Maudor Hospital, and also with some other cohort of patients in Nice that have specific cohort of obese patients. So to study the alteration of fluidization in murine models, so as I told you, we are using these two diet models. We are putting mice under diet during 6 months to be sure that they develop good steatosis, let's say. So as you observe, so we have always control as standard diet. So the body weight of the two model or two NAFLD model was increased after 6 months when compared to control diet. And the analysis on tissue liver section reveals that high-fat, high-sucrose and choline-deficient high-fat diet consistently leads to a mixed macro-mediovesicular steatosis in both models and with more pronounced inflammation in choline-deficient high-fat diet model. So we have analyzed first in global the ploidy of this liver by isolating hepatocyte and analyze DNA contents by FACS analysis. So here this is FACS analysis 2N, 4N, and 8N contained in standard diet mice. And we clearly see that in high-fat, high-sucrose and choline-deficient high-fat diet, we increase the octoploid fractions. So we next analyze if we have modification of physiological polyploid contingent, binucleated. So we just quantify on tissue liver section the binucleated fraction. So I will not enter in detail, but basically we have no more binucleated contingent in NASH tissue linked to insulinoresistance phenotypes. But by contrast, we have a high increase of nuclear ploidy. So how we do to quantify nuclear ploidy? We have developed in the lab a specific macros where we are able to measure nuclei area of all cells in liver parenchyma. And because hepatocytes are the bigger cells, we are able to really measure only the nuclear size of hepatocyte contingent. And because there is a clear correlation between nuclear area and ploidy content, we have a specific macro that give a color code to the different nuclear content. So diploid purple, green is tetraploid contingent, and red octoploid contingent. And we are able to visualize all the ploidy content on tissue liver section. So we clearly see that if we control mice that has been put under standard diet during 6 months or 4 months here, 6 months, this is the same results, and high-fat, high-sucrose, and we have the same result for choline-deficient high-fat diet, that we clearly increase the amount of octoploid contingent in this NASH tissue. And after, if we are trying to analyze if there is a specific localization of this highly polyploid contingent, we select specific area when we have lipid vacuole. I hope that you can see on the screen. Lipid vacuole and area when we have no lipid vacuole. And we clearly see that we accumulate this octoploid contingent in area when we have the steatosis accumulations. So we figure out if this is true also in human patients. So this was done in collaboration with Valérie Praradi when we have analyzed 3 groups of patients. So control liver disease with no fatty history, and 3 groups of patients with NASH, with different level of fibrosis. So low score, F1, F2, higher score, F3, F4, and also liver section with patients that have developed HCC. And we clearly observe that compared to control liver, we have a higher level of octoploid contingent in NASH parenchyma. And clearly this percentage of highly polyploid hepatocytes seems not to be dependent of the severity of the fibrosis, because we have the same level in group 1 and group 2, and to precede, in fact, HCC development. We have also seen, if we observe the same colocalization with lipid vacuole in octoploid contagion that we observe in our mice model. We have already analyzed at the moment, I think, like 20 patients, and we clearly observe the same thing. Is like we have a colocalization of highly polyploid contagion with lipid vacuole also in tissue liver section coming from NASH patient. So from this part of the work, we can really conclude that there is a correlation between lipid accumulation in the liver and nuclear polyploidization. And we have tried to figure out how these cells are generated in the fatty liver parenchyma, and I will explain to you how. So our expertise is to analyze cell cycle division from hepatocytes, from ex vivo hepatocyte culture. So we are taking from normal liver, NASH liver, we are isolating primary hepatocytes that are in a quiescent stage, and we are putting the hepatocyte with mitogen to be able to follow the cell cycle division. And we know from now since 10 years that we are using this system that when we are plating the hepatocytes, they are in G0. We are putting mitogen after 12 hours of culture, and they are progressing in G1, reaching ACE phase around 36 hours, and are in G2M phase more in after 48 and 60 hours. And then we can compare the division of control hepatocyte, fatty hepatocytes in our different models. So what we try to figure out is the mechanisms that lead to the genesis of the polyploid contagion. And we were thinking that because nuclear ploidy has been described in other systems to be linked to endoreplication cycle. So endoreplication cycle is basically a cell cycle without mitosis. The cell progresses into G1 ACE phase, and basically the cell cycle is blocked at the G2M transition. Because you don't have the activation of MPF factor, mitosis promoting factor, that is in fact cyclin B associated to the kinase CDK1. So you can just analyze an endoreplication cycle just to see if this factor is activated, and that's what we are trying to analyze in fatty hepatocytes. So I show you the example for high-fat, high-sucrose culture. So we clearly see to have a good MPF factor activated, first thing, you need to accumulate cyclin B protein during ACE phase G2 transition. And second, you need to unphosphorylate this tyrosine 15 on CDK1. And when you have a high level of cyclin B protein with the CDK1, this is unphosphorylated. This complex can be translated from the cytoplasm to the nucleus, and then you will have the breakdown of the nuclear envelope, and then mitosis begins. So if we follow the activation, we clearly see that at 36 hours, when we are in ACE phase, in both conditions, when we progress into G2, we accumulate cyclin B in both conditions. So we have no alteration of accumulation of cyclin B. But by contrast, CDK1 is phosphorylated in ACE phase. This is normal, and this is unphosphorylated in a control condition. at 48 and 60 hours, but we clearly see that for fatty hepatocyte, we still have a high level of CDK1 phosphorylation. So basically, MPS is not activated and we perform endoreplication cycle. And we observe also that in fact, the cells do not enter mitosis because we have the activation of the DNA damage response under the signaling of ATR, P53 and P21 in fatty hepatocyte, when we clearly see that we have a high level of ATR phosphorylation, accumulation of P53 and P21, and this is how the cell cycle is blocked in fatty hepatocyte. You engage another replication cycle. This leads to the genesis of this mononuclear polyploid contingent. So what we are trying to next figure out is why we have this activation in fatty hepatocytes of this DNA damage response. So what is the link between polyploidy, DDR activation, and some alteration during ACE phase progression of fatty hepatocytes? So we hypothesize that perhaps this DDR signaling might be activated by a replicative dynamic perturbation that has been described in cancer cells. And we have tried to figure out if we have some problem in progression into ACE phase into fatty hepatocytes. To analyze that, we have pulse our culture with BRDU at 60 hours just to see if the fatty hepatocytes are still in ACE phase. And in fact, if we compare BRDU labeling, we clearly see that we accumulate fatty hepatocyte in ACE phase in both conditions, in high-fat sucrose or choline deficient high-fat culture, and really it reflects that the hepatocytes are like stuck in ACE phase. There's some problem to progress into ACE phase. To go more deeper in this, to explain more deeper this alteration of ACE phase progression, we monitor DNA force progression, and with a specific assay, it's called DNA combined assay. So to do these techniques, it's not so easy, but we are collaborating with a lab in Montpellier that are working on force replication. So basically, you do a double labeling of your culture with two successive pulses of thymidine analogs, that is CLDU and EDU, that have specific colors, so red and green. And next, you isolate your DNA from your cells, and this DNA is in fact stretched on a cover slip that are immunostained with two antibodies against CLDU in red and EDU in green. And with this specific immunostaining, you can label the replicon, and in fact, you measure the speed of the replications. And when you observe the image of DNA fiber from control and NAFL hepatocyte, we clearly see that high-fat sucrose and choline-deficient high-fat diet have shorter replicon compared to standard diet DNA. And if we quantify if we measure the replication fork speed, we clearly see that we have a reduction of the speed of replication in both models, in high-fat sucrose and in choline-deficient high-fat diet. So this is really the proof that this is a replication threat, and that proliferating NAFL hepatocyte experience clearly replication stress. So we next, as I told you, we already observed that ATR is activating in fatty hepatocytes, And we know that, in fact, ATR is a central player during the replication stress response, and in fact coordinates different things. First of all, the cell cycle arrest, to be sure that you can block the cell and try to repair DNA damage if there are some DNA damage that are being accumulating during this phase. So they stop the replication machinery. It is linked to all the repair process with different targets, for example, CHK1 to have the cell cycle arrest, and to all the process of repair, you have phosphorylation of H2AX, that is a specific target for DNA lesion, and of RPA that protect the single strand break for protection for damage. So we have analyzed that this pathway in our culture, and we clearly see that in control hepatocyte, we don't have the activation of all these targets, but by contrast, we have a high level of, as we already observed, phosphorylation of ATR, phosphorylation of CHK1, accumulation of phospho H2AX as DNA lesion, and phosphorylation of RPA. So to prove, so what we really want to prove is that this is because we have replication stress and DNA damage, that the DDR is activated, and that we have the block into G2M cycle, and the lesion are really due, the accumulation of DNA lesion are really due to the progression into ACE phase. So what we have performed, if we have performed a double labeling on our culture of gamma H2AX, so to quantify lesion, and also on phospho H3 labeling, that is, it is really labeled only cells that are in G2M. And in fact, what we observe, if we compare the cells that are double labeled with these two gamma H2AX and phospho H3, sorry, that almost all NAFL PHH3 labeled nuclei were positive for gamma H2AX. That really leads us to conclude that you have to proceed through ACE phase to accumulate this DNA lesion. So to reinforce our data, we have also performed a COMET assay to reinforce the accumulation of DNA lesion on our culture when cells have proceeded through ACE phase. So, as you may know, by this assay, you can quantify double strand break and also single strand break by measuring nuclear DNA tails. So when you accumulate all these lesions, you clearly see, you isolate your nuclei from the cells, and you've done some migration of an agarose gel, and you measure the tails of the nuclei, and more DNA damage you are, more you will have a tail on the nuclei. And we clearly observe that there is tail on the nuclei from high-fat high sucrose and choline-deficient high-fat diet, and this is clearly observed here by the quantifications. So we conclude that NAFL hepatocytes accumulate DNA damage after they have proceed through replication stress. So next, we really want to understand, because pathogenesis of NAFL, there is a tremendous metabolic reprogramming. We want to identify which metabolic disturbance might interfere with the replicative machineries. So what we have performed, metabolomic analysis both, I will present you here on isolated hepatocyte, but we have also performed a metabolomic analysis on liver samples, and we have observed the same results by leaky chromatography mass spectrometry. We have different pathways that are modulated, of course, but we are very interesting to observe that there is a significant enrichment in purine and pyrimidine metabolism in the fatty hepatocytes. And to go further, still by LCMS, we are trying to measure the nucleotide pools biosynthesis, and we observe that the desoxyadenosine triphosphate, DATP, but also desoxythymidine triphosphate was reduced in the fatty hepatocytes in both settings during high-fat high sucrose, but also in choline-deficient high-fat diets. And what is quite interesting is in a different mammalian system, it has been demonstrated that if you have an alteration in your nucleotide pools, that is clearly a limiting factor for a correct replication procession. If you have a limiting pool of DNTP, this can be clearly related to replication stress. So what we have decided is try to supply our culture with DNTP as they experience replication stress, and to see if we can rescue this phenotype of replication stress. And that's what we have performed. And remarkably, we observe that by the addition of this DNTP in NAFL hepatocyte, we really reduce replication stress, as it is reflected here by a reduction of CK1 phosphorylation in both conditions, high-fat sucrose and choline-deficient high-fat diet culture, and also the accumulation of gamma H2AX. And also, we have also a reduction in our DNA damage accumulation that we test by COMET-SA. So we clearly think that this nucleotide pool imbalance can be really a key feature during NAFL disease and can contribute to replication stress in fatty hepatocytes. Recently, like last month, we are trying also to see if we have the same metabolic alteration in human liver. So we have analyzed by LCMS nucleotide pool imbalance in a cohort of patients, of control patients and a NASH patient. And we were quite pleased to observe that we have, like we observed in our murine model, a significant change in purine and pyrimidine metabolism in NASH versus control. And we clearly suggest that this nucleotide pool imbalance can be a key feature of NAFL and contribute to replication stress in fatty hepatocytes. So we clearly we clearly demonstrate that in fatty livers, this metabolic reprogramming that is more linked to DNT pool alteration implicate replication stress, DNA lesion, and this DNA damage activation at the G2M transition and the genesis of nuclear pathological polyploidy. So we really want to understand what is the outcome of these cells. Do they have specific features? Are they engaged into senescent stage? And that's what we are trying to figure out. And lastly, we have been really interesting to see if there is some intracellular recognition of these specific cells. and we have been interested in a specific pathway that perhaps you know is the cGAS-STING pathway. So this pathway was first discovered in the crosstalk in immune response in cells that has been infected by DNA virus or bacteria, and this pathway has been is activated. But recently, it has been demonstrated that this pathway is also activated following DNA damage to mediate, in fact, an anti-tumor immunity with an associated response with cells that are engaged into senescence or apoptosis. So how this pathway is activated? In fact, the cGAS recognize cytosolic DNAs, and this triggers the production of the cGAMP intermediate that activate STING that is localized into the RO. So there is an activation of STING that will after induce notably the secretion of cytokine and type 1 interferons. So we try to figure out if the accumulation of DNA lesion in fatty hepatocyte can activate this pathway. And in fact, yes, that's what we observe in our culture. We clearly observe by Western blot analysis that we have an increase of STING in alpha-type sucrose culture and choline deficient alpha culture compared to a normal culture, and clearly that the accumulation of STING was more pronounced when NAFL hepatocyte experienced replication threats at 60 hours of culture. And if we measure the cGAMP at this timing, we clearly observe that we observe an accumulation of cGAMP that we measure by LCMS compared to standard diet isolated hepatocytes, and also that we accumulate interferon beta in our culture in both models. So we really think, we clearly think that the DNA lesions that are accumulated in NAFL hepatocyte drives this activation of this pathway and can be important for the outcome of the cell, but also for the progression of the disease. So what we have done also recently, this time it was done in collaboration with Professor Tran and Professor Wall in Nice, with a specific cohort of patients with obese patients without steatosis or obese patients with steatosis. We have tried to figure out if we have the activation of this cGAS-STING pathway related to the development of the disease. And what we observe is that the hepatic mRNA expression of cGAS and STING was specifically upregulated in NAFLD obese patient, but also we show that cGAS-STING expression positively correlate with NAFLD activity score. So finally, to recapitulate this all this process that take place during NAFLD disease, all this replication stress, activation of cGAS-STING pathway of polymerization, we have tried to figure out are we able to recapitulate all this phase in human cell line that have lipid overload. So this was done in collaboration with Matthias Alkenwalder in Germany, where he's using a specific HepaRG cells treated with a combination of lipid overload and TNF-alpha to mimic, in fact, NASH progression. And we clearly observe that fatty acid treated cells plus or minus TNF-alpha we have an alteration of replication with the low speed of forced replication that has been done with the DNA combined assay. And we observe also an accumulation of lesion. And this is clearly related to the accumulation of gamma H2AX and STING activations. So what I want to propose you today is clearly that during NASH disease and during the progression of NASH disease, when the hepatocyte divide, you have really replication stress that take place with DNA damage that accumulates in the hepatocyte that leads to the genesis of this nuclear polyploid contingents. So we don't know what will be the outcome of this cell. Clearly, we already observed that it seems that they are engaged into a senescent stage. We are trying to figure out, because of this SIGA-STING pathway, do these cells are specific, recognized by specific immune population, and try to understand if, as the stage of HCC development, can they participate to the development of HCC tumor in an NAFLD setting. So I will stop that for today. I have more slides, but if we want to have time for discussion, I want to thank all the people in the lab, specifically Romain Donnet, that has done all the work that I present you today, with the collaboration of Maëva Sarroul, that is also a PhD student in the lab, and Pierre Cordier. And thank you for you. Okay, so first of all, the level of DNTP is quite low. And so we have done the same experiments on control hepatocytes to see if we are not altering different things. So we have measured some mitochondrial stress and done SIOX analysis to see if we are not impacting on mitochondria, for example. So we are not impacting on mitochondria. And all the control hepatocyte progress normally through its phase. So we have not much impact on that. In fact, all these experiments has been done with Bernard Lopez in Institut Cochin, that is working on replicacy stress, oxidative stress, that is doing a lot of experiments like that to try to understand replication stress in other cell types. I didn't present all the data. So what we have also analyzed. So I just present you the rescue of A-space progression, but we have also analyzed at the end of the culture if there's some alteration of ploidy. So clearly, if you follow a cell cycle in a fatty hepatocyte cycle, you have replication stress, you activate the G2M checkpoint, and at the end of the culture, you increase the nuclear ploidy content. And clearly, when you treat your cell with DNTP, you have not much the G2M checkpoint that is activated, and you also reduce at the end of the culture the ploidy content. So I didn't have time to present all the things. And we have the same thing with lipid overload. I mean, if you do some lipid overload on normal murine hepatocytes like or hepa-RG cells, you really recapitulate the replication stress and the genesis of polyploid contingent at the end of the culture. So good question. So we are trying to figure out if we can treat the animal with DNTP, but in fact, it's quite tough. The only thing that we can work on is on this system on lipid overload, but at the moment, we don't know. I mean, it's a good question, but we don't know. I mean, there is some, we know that there is some drug that has been used because replication stress is trying to be targeted more in tumor. So there is some specific molecule not targeting DNTP, more targeting cells that are ongoing replication stress to engage the cell into apoptosis. But I think this is the only molecules that are available for the moment. Good question. That's what we are trying to figure out. We are doing that. We are trying to measure all these things on tissue liver section and because we are also some mice that are mutated for the DNA damage response checkpoint, ATR and ATM. So we are trying to figure out if we remove all these checkpoints, do the cell are more engaged in senescent, or how it go with the development of the disease. So we are measuring. Yes, in fact, there is cytoplasmic DNA. So we just use some specific antibody that are able to detect cytoplastic DNA, and we clearly see that we are an accumulation of this cytoplasmic DNA into the polyploid cells, and we will. We have also developed some sting knockout mice that has been put under diet to figure out what will be the impact on the sting pathway on the ploidization and HCC development. That's what we are trying to do. No, not at all. No, it's a good point. No, we had no. Sorry.
Thank you for this very nice talk, and it's been a pleasure having you here with us today.
And hope to see you soon in Wheel. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.